Hello, everyone, and welcome to my B1 Low Intermediate English course. In this module, you will learn the modal verbs or modal forms must, mustn't, have to, don't have to, and should and ought to. At the end, you will get to practice what you just learned with a few sample exercises. Let's get started. All right, we'll look briefly at this table here about these modal forms. Okay, so must, here are a couple examples in the different types of sentences. For positive sentences, you use it before the main verb. We must call early. And negative, we mustn't call early. For a question, we put must first. So must we call early? Um, and then we can say for an answer, yes, we must, or no, we mustn't. Okay, so must is an auxiliary verb, um, and we can use must and mustn't in negatives and questions. Um, all right. Must has no past or future forms. We would have for this we would use had to or will have to. Let's talk about have to briefly. This means obligation, um, positive, negative, question, and answer. So positive, he has to wear a uniform, and then negative, he doesn't have to wear a uniform. So we insert the verb do before this. Question starts with does or do. Does he have to wear a uniform? Yes, he does, or no, he doesn't. Okay, have to itself is not an auxiliary verb, so we would use do or did for negatives and questions, like you saw. Okay, so note that this can be a common mistake. He hadn't to wear a uniform. It should be he didn't have to wear a uniform. Okay, so basically we use had to talk about the past and will have to talk about the future. So we'll look more at these things and some more examples in the next slides. Okay, so these are models of obligation, prohibition, um, necessity, advice, and things like that. So must and mustn't are speak about prohibiting, have to, and don't have to. Um, these express obligation, and then should is for advice. So let's talk about have to. So have to is not an auxiliary verb like we just saw. We need do, does, or did to make negatives and questions in the present and past. So, for example, you'll see which one here is right and wrong. Have you to get up early tomorrow? And then look at this one. Do you have to get up early tomorrow? So this one is formed incorrectly, as you can see. So always start with do. And then we have, did you have to change the batteries? Right? And then this one, we don't have to stay until the end. So that one's negative. All right. So go to the next one. Okay, we can use have to in all the verb forms, present, past, perfect tenses, gerunds, um, to infinitive forms, etc. Okay, so we have I don't like having to pack lunches. This one's the gerund form, verb that ends in ing. In this one, she has had to work on weekends since she started working. Okay, so we've got present perfect here, has had to, and then we've got I had to cancel the meeting. This one's past simple because had is past for have. And then we have you will have to wait until tomorrow. This one's future, obviously. All right. So, have to is used to describe an obligation, a rule, or something that is necessary. So, for example, you have to drive on the left in England, or there's I'll have to get up early tomorrow. The exam is at 8 a.m. Okay, so yes, for the first one, this is a rule. You have to do this, drive on the left in countries like this. And then with this second one here, this is something that's necessary to having to get up early because the exam is early here. All right. Okay. Then we have this expression, have got to. So in spoken informal English, you can often use have got to instead of have to. Here's an example. I can't stay. I've got to go to the supermarket. So we don't we use it very often in native English. All right, let's talk now about must. Must is a modal verb and it has a present form which can be used to talk about the present or future. The negative form is must not or mustn't, and the question is you can ask must I, must you, etc. It is used to describe something that the speaker thinks is necessary to do. For example, I must go to the doctor. Here, the speaker, I, first person, is saying he thinks it's necessary here. So, all right. All right. Here are a few more examples. I must get up early tomorrow. Same as the other. He feels that. That's his opinion. You mustn't call me before 8 a.m. Negative here. And then you must eat less candy and sweets, or I must try to do more exercise. So, all of these here are the opinion of the person speaking, right? So, and then we can also use must to express strong advice. For example, you must see the new film. It's amazing. It almost sounds like you've got to, but here we've got strong advice. You've heard it also said you just have to see this new film. So yeah, must see. Okay, let's talk about must or have to. What's the difference? Must only has a present form, so we need to use have to for all other verb forms. Past, future, perfect forms, infinitive, etc. Okay, so for example, you will have to come with me. Um, Future here. Um, we had to drive very fast, past simple. Or I have had to work overtime lately. So present perfect here. All right. We normally use have to for questions. Questions with must are not common. Regarding the meaning, sometimes there's little difference between have to and must. So, for example, I must go to the hospital. I'm not well. Okay. And then down here where it says I have to go to the hospital. Um, so there doesn't sound like there's much difference in the meaning. The speaker feels it's necessary to do this action, go to the hospital. And then the question form, do we have to sit here? Can also say, must we sit here? But this is not as common. We usually ask, do we have to? And then must you wear those old shoes? Like you see here. Um, so yeah, it sounds stronger actually than do you have to wear those old shoes? All right, let's see here. Okay, so we normally use have to when there's an external obligation, and we use must when the obligation comes from the opinion of the speaker. So, a few examples here. We have to get up early tomorrow. The meeting is at 9. So, so this obligation, it's not something we made. It's because they made the meeting here early at 9. And then we must get up early tomorrow if we want to finish painting. So here, this is the speaker's opinion. In this one, you have to wear a suit at the meeting. So this here is a rule for the company. The company made this rule. And then last, you must buy a new suit for the meeting. All right, so here it's my opinion. I'm saying buy a new suit for the meeting. The other one is old. All right. Okay. Must or don't have to. Or, I mean, mustn't. Sorry. Okay. Don't have to and mustn't have opposite meanings. We use don't have to when we don't need to do something, when there's no obligation. And we use mustn't to talk about prohibition, prohibiting something, when we aren't supposed to do something. So it's not allowed. Okay, a couple examples. You mustn't park here. Now it means it's not allowed. And then you don't have to wait here. Okay, so this means basically you can do it, but it's not necessary. If you don't have to do something, it means you can do it if you want, but you don't need to do it. Here's an example. I would like to sell my jewelry, right? But I don't have to, right? This is not necessary. It's just an option. All right. Okay. And then we've got can't or be not allowed to. Kind of means the same thing as mustn't. All right. So we can also use can't or be not allowed to instead of mustn't. Um, so for this one here, you mustn't smoke in this area. You can also say you are not allowed to or can't smoke in this area. And in this example, you mustn't use your phones in class. So this you can also say here you can't or are not allowed to use your phones during class. Okay, let's talk about should and shouldn't. So should is used to give advice, right? Or an opinion about what we think is right or wrong. For example, you should go to a therapist. Or I think schools shouldn't offer soft drinks to their students. Okay, so, all right. So should actually is not as strong as must or have to. For example, you should be more patient with her. Um, so this is just advice here. And then in this one, you must be more patient with her. So this is more like strong advice. The speaker is telling you he strongly advises this. Um, all right. Last, let's talk about ought to or ought not to. It's similar to should and shouldn't. So ought to has the same meaning as should, although it is more formal and not as common. For example, you ought to go to the dentist. Your tooth hurts. All right. And this one, you ought not to be so strict with your daughter. So we don't use ought or ought not to as much. And then we've got that store should or ought to give you a refund. So, yeah. All right, well, let's move on to a few sample exercises and see what we know so far. Okay, here we are, exercise 1. So what we'll do is choose the correct option here from the drop-down menus. All right, so number 1, when we were at school, we got had to or must or ought to wear a uniform. Okay, so we're talking about a time in the past when we were at school. So what would we use? So if you chose the top one, had to, this is expressing external obligation, right? But in the past, so that would be correct. Number 2, you be an expert to use the basic functions of the program. The okay, so ought not to, don't have to, or mustn't. Which sounds right? Okay, so sounds like um, obligation, necessity, but negative. Okay, so if you chose the middle one, don't have to be an expert, that sounds like it's the best answer. All right, number 3, you should, must, or have got to tell her that you are sorry. Okay, so it sounds to me like it's strong advice. Um, so it can be hard to decide, but um, so it's coming from the speaker. So if you chose the middle one, must, that would sound like the best answer here. You must tell her that you are sorry. Okay, number 4. Okay, we must, had to, or had got to go to the meeting. Why didn't you go? Okay, so it was in the past, sounds like. Okay, so, um, all right, so if you chose the middle one, had to, that was obligation, right? But in the past. Okay, let's try one more. I wear glasses. I still can see perfectly well. Okay, so shouldn't, mustn't, or don't have to. Okay, all right, so sounds like um, lack of necessity here. So if you chose the last one, don't have to, I don't have to wear glasses because I can still see perfectly well. That sounds like the correct answer. All right, let's look at exercise 2. So this is multiple choice. So we'll choose the forms that mean the same as the underlined words. Okay, so we have you should visit them. What means the same as should? So, all right, so if you chose option B, ought to, remember that means the same about as should. Okay, number 2, this one has 2 correct options. So you mustn't use the swimming pool before 10. Okay, so what do you think means the same? Okay, so that means, so you've got, it's like prohibition. So answer option A would be 1, aren't allowed to. What would be the other? Option C, can't, right? What we looked at. Okay, number 3, we have to clean our room every day. So what means the same as have to? Okay, all right. So if you look at option C, have got to, it sounds about the same. So option C. All right, one more here. You must come and see this. Okay, so here we have a strong opinion from the speaker. So have got to, can, or have to. All right. So So you've seen the example where they say you have to see this movie or something. So if you chose option C, there's that. But you can also say which one. It's about the same. Option A, have got to. All right. Exercise 3. We'll look at that real quick. So we'll choose from the words here in the box. So note that we can use ought to and not should for more formal sentences. All right. For example, are you any good at athletics? How fast can you run? So, so, all right. So the advice from the health committee is that all people with symptoms, so which modal form goes here? Go to the doctor. So we want, you can say should or ought to here. So, so it sounds more formal. So you want to put which one? Ought to, right? Okay. All right, number 2. This is a non-smoking area. So you can say can't or mustn't, right? So you can do either one. So let's say mustn't smoke here. All right. Number 3, I hate big multinational companies. I think they pay more taxes. Okay. So it sounds like opinion of the speaker. Um, you can say should. That's kind of like an opinion. So, right, one more here. When she was 4 years old, she read perfectly well. Okay, now this sounds more like ability here, not prohibiting or allowing. So we've got the option, or we've got could up here. So we're going to put could here. So that's can in the past. Well, all right, excellent job on these exercises. It shows that you paid close attention. I know that can be um, a little bit confusing, which one to use. I mean, which modal form. But yes, it depends on what they're used for. Oops. Well, I can help you learn to speak English with more confidence. I'm TESOL certified. I teach native U.S. English. I'm experienced in online tutoring, and I work with all learning levels and most age groups. So whether you need help with grammar, speaking, vocabulary, writing, or any other area, you've come to the right place. Well, thank you all for watching my video and happy learning.